Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon. If you enjoy the videos here, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the Word Balloon YouTube channel, and of course, if you enjoy the audios and the videos, you can subscribe to my Patreon page, patreon.com/wordballoon. Hey everybody, welcome back. It's another episode look at Harley Quinn, the great DC animated series. We're looking at Season 1, Episode 11, The Harley Quinn Highway. And John Suttress here, and as always, being joined by the co-creator of the Harley Quinn animated series and co-showrunner, it's Patrick Schumacker, everybody. Welcome back, Patrick.
Thanks for having me.
As always, man, Harley Quinn Highway. Pretty cool stuff. Now, again, we start off with where we left off in Episode 10, that Harley has been captured by the Scarecrow. And I'm looking at my notes here. And of course, now Harley breaks free from Gus and the other henchmen for a moment and does so with guns, but she wants everyone to know that despite using guns, she is a responsible gun owner and believes in the responsible gun laws and gun
background checks and whatnot. Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
How do we justify that that Ivy ends up going like full on Jason Bourne here? We're like, well, we should probably say that she's fired a gun before. All right. She's probably, she grew up kind of in a wealthy family. She's probably shot some rifles or something. She's probably hunted some homeless people. No, that's what rich people do. But yeah, she's got a handgun,
Yeah.
And
very capable.
Yeah, she's got. I mean, she puts like two between the eyes a couple of times, and you're just like, whoa. Yeah, I love this opening sequence where she thinks that she's going to get out. And just before we move on, this episode written by Adam Stein, who was with us our entire run, directed by Vinton Hoyk, who was with us for quite a bit of our run. I think he came to us from, I want to say he came to us from Young Justice.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, he's really great with the action scenes, and I thought this opening was pretty great. But then we ultimately needed to buy it back that Ivy, her freedom was a pipe dream, and she is immediately, it's almost like maybe she was just being toyed with, right?
Sure.
Scarecrow. So Scarecrow. Also, I don't know if I've said this before. We were talking about iZombie in an episode prior. Scarecrow's voice actor is Raul Coley, who plays Dr. Ravi on iZombie. So that's how we know Raul, and he's a massive DC fan. Yeah, we were just thrilled to have him on board as well. Won't spoil what happens to Scarecrow down the road,
Sure.
but yeah. So Scarecrow, has her. He's using her for something clearly. We still don't quite know what they're plotting, but basically we wanted to kind of implicate in this episode ultimately that this could be the Legion of Doom behind this whole thing. Because, Scarecrow, he's a member.
Right.
Stands to reason that maybe the whole organization is somehow, going to be using Ivy for one of their evil plots. At which point, we cut to what's happening with the crew having left Harley. What are they doing now to make ends meet? And so we sort of visit them all in their various new jobs. Clayface has managed to not stray too far from his, vocation with Harley, and he is now a henchman for the Riddler. And we see this scene, which was probably, I would say, most inspired by the end of Pee-wee's Big Adventure, when I don't know if you remember this, but they're at the drive-in, and Pee-wee Herman's life has been turned into a feature film, an action movie, starring James Brolin as
PW. Yeah,
and
PW Herman. Yep.
And they're in the hotel lobby, and Peewee gets a cameo in the movie about his life. He's dressed as a bellman, and he's behind the desk, and they've like overdubbed his voice. But he keeps walking into the shot, like right in between you got this two shot of these two, handsome film actors, and then little Peewee keeps trying to get his screen time in there, and keeps ruining the shot basically. And I was like, well, that is what Clayface would do if he were in a filmed, threat from a supervillain. He's gonna try, and he's just so overeager and so excited to be there and to participate as part of the whole ensemble that he's gonna stick his head in the frame and mouth along with what the Riddler's trying to say and distract the hell out of him. So that was the origin of that idea. Psycho, he's a card reader at a carnival,
yes.
and which sort of it plays into his backstory as well, from the story of where he gets his powers, which we delve into in a later episode, but it involves a carnival. Now I'm losing my mind. We haven't shown that episode yet. No, we haven't. Okay.
but yeah. And then King Shark is King Shark doing tech support basically?
Yeah, he's a genius at the Apple bar, or the Apple Genius Bar, basically. And then we have this weird runner with Denise, who's the girlfriend or the mistress of the guy who's getting his cards read by Dr. Psycho. We like having these weird tangential characters that end up making their way Cheryl, who's Jim Gordon's sort of only female on his squad for a time, ends up voiced by Lake Bell, ends up becoming a much bigger part of the show, and is woven throughout the whole 2 seasons actually in the show, in our show. But then we were like, well, what are we gonna do with this weird couple? I forget the guy's name. And then we're gonna have them come back at the end of this episode, and something bad's gonna happen to them. And I just love that kind of stuff where it's I think it was either a mid-credit sequence or just an outtake in the original Austin Powers movie. I think it was the original Austin Powers movie where a henchman gets run over by the steamroller, right?
Yes, yes.
This pained, tortured, minute-long scene of a guy slowly dying. And then it's the guy getting, they show, I think it was in a mid-credit sequence where it's actually Dr. Evil's organization calling to tell the family of that henchman who got run over, what happened. And they go into his whole backstory and everything. I just love that stuff so much.
Sure.
And I think you can see it in this show. So, anyways.
No, that is a good kind of callback at the end of the episode. Absolutely, with Denise and her romantic interest, and it's like a little mini soap opera where that story is going. Absolutely.
So yeah, but back to the important story in the show.
Sure.
We find out Ivy's, pheromones are being harvested to create this sort of super toxin that. So we see this lab, and we do this kind of. It very much was a Breaking Bad homage, seeing sort of the process of how the toxin is made, essentially. So we see the assembly line of that. The music is 100% inspired by the music from Breaking Bad. And then
combination of Scarecrow's fear gas and Ivy's plant toxin, basically.
Exactly. And we don't know, what
purpose
it's being used for. But, Harley makes her case to round up the crew and get back together again for basically one last heist, which is to rescue Ivy. And that's the only reason the crew agrees to do it, is for Ivy. And so we have our Reservoir Dogs little slow-mo badass walk where they're all wearing their hazmat suits and disguising themselves as goons, basically. And then I'll end up falling on themselves because they're not cool at all.
And even Cyborg's not only is it over his body, but it's also over his wheelchair. So it just
which makes it physically impossible to move, I would think, but somehow he kind of does it.
It's a cartoon. And Killer Shark is kind of literally bursting out of his. Clayface kind of has almost like muffin top kind of like half shirt going with his look and everything. No, it's
Exactly.
well, and also the pretzel wiener food truck that the all the goons are delighted that there's a. I mean, it's a great Trojan horse moment where that's how
Yeah.
they're able to get into the compound, and it's like, hey, everybody! It's oh my god, it's a pretzel wiener truck. They're all running towards it.
I
So,
mean, having worked in production for a while now, you like never can underestimate the amount of love that a food truck will receive by a crew. You know, it's like everybody works their asses off uh, on a show. You know, for everybody from every department. You know, every person on that call sheet, and it's so rare that they get recognized or are, you know, gifted with what they, you know, deserve. And, you know, on at least on like live action shows, you know, what we have kind of a tradition that we learned from other showrunners, of, you know, providing the crew, whoever writes that week's episode provides like a food truck or a coffee truck or
oh,
something
okay,
just as like a thank you, right, to
sure,
the
sure,
crew. And people love it. I mean, they
sure.
love it. It is, you know, a little thing that goes like a really long way, and that was the inspiration for something like this, where these underappreciated goons were excited about their pretzel wiener sandwiches or whatever we call it. It's like, yeah, see, they care about us, and
Exactly.
yeah, and allowing the crew entry into Planet Wide Pavers. They get to Ivy. They realize that she's out cold. But hey, you know, our crew has powers, of course, so we get to revisit Dr. Psycho's power to sort of astral project inside of someone's mind. So they go inside Ivy's mind, and this sequence was probably, I think it's safe to say, the sequence that got rewritten the most out of any sequence in the entire history of the show. And it was really just, I think it just wasn't connecting with, you know, the studio, the way that in its initial iterations, it just was confusing, this sort of like linear journey that the characters were taking inside of Ivy's mind, and how it was just kind of jam packed with all of these like kind of strange metaphors and things like that. And it really evolved over time. I mean, the basic shape was there, that our characters do go on this journey and eventually kind of confront a big bad, who then, you know, once is unmasked, is revealed to be Harley in our Empire Strikes Back homage that Clayface calls out. But it really like, we didn't have Frank as the Cheshire Cat all the time, you know, kind of as the spirit guide or whatever you want to call it, leading them through Harley's mind. Originally, you know, when Kite Man gets incinerated, or the sort of cerebral version of Kite Man, whatever, the dream version of Kite Man gets incinerated, it's revealed that it's just Scarecrow with the toxin, and then Harley rips the bag off of his head, and Ivy rips the bag off his head. No, Harley does, and to find that it's Harley.
Right.
Harley, Ivy. Anyway.
I'm up.
So we ended up going with like just sort of like the Grim Reaper, or like death, because it was just this sort of universal symbol that didn't have any like, you know, confusion as to what we're trying to say. Using Scarecrow just, it kind of like felt like it was this like muddled message where it's just like, wait a minute, like this is another character that we know that kind of has baggage, so let's just create this like very this cipher, right, that has like, you know, just the attachment to like the end of things, right? So that's how we ended up with just this sort of Grim Reaper character. And then, you know, when we got the initial animation back, it really felt like we needed to like plus it with VFX. So even after we had written a bunch of iterations and then it got animated, we still like went back in and reiterated what this whole sequence looked like, and just making it scary. And that was Gus Juro, our VFX artist, just killed it on this sequence. Like all those like little like those like eyeballs that are moving around, like looking at them. It seemed like some kind of like H.P. Lovecraft kind of creature.
Sure.
Like that was all Gus adding that stuff. Just the look of it and the flame effects from the Grim Reaper character and the blood from the trees that get eaten by the wood chipper. That's all Gus's additions. There's so much blood in this show, and like the sheer tonnage of it is all Gus adding stuff in. We have to like pull back on it sometimes because he puts so much of it in. But I mean, which was our mandate in the beginning. He's delivering. But anyways, yeah. So that we had this whole sequence that kind of goes into Ivy's mind and her backstory a bit, and we see little Ivy, kind of being emotionally abused by her father. And some people asked, so in your show was Ivy always green? Because it's, you're seeing young Ivy and what ended up happening was it was a happy accident because, canonically Ivy's turned into Poison Ivy, by, Jason Woodrue and
the Floronic Man. Yes.
Yeah. And all that's done like when she's basically, she's an adult. And so, any interpretation of Ivy that is the green skinned version, it's like you have to assume that, well, she was turned into that. Well, the animation came back from overseas and she was green, but I mean, she was green in the designs and everything as the young Ivy. And it was a thing where we were like, wait a minute, why did we do that? Like, she wouldn't be green. And oh crap. And then we were talking about it and we were like, okay, well, wait a minute. This is like Ivy's, none of this is real. This is all a construct that Ivy has created in her mind.
Right.
So it stands to reason that Ivy sees herself, her true self, as, Poison Ivy, right? As who she is now, and has always kind of on the inside, at least, kind of felt that way. And so we were like, it actually is more right that her own interpretation of herself would be the green-skinned Ivy. And so it was a happy accident that ended up saving us probably a lot of money, not having to go back and recoloring Ivy to make her, her more, the skin that she was born with. So that was just one of those weird things where it was like a happy accident that caused a brief moment of panic from all of us before, we shipped the finished product. But yeah,
essence, though. Right. It's her essence, though, and again, these are all constructs in her mind, and that's the thing. Maybe she always was Ivy inside all along, and so yeah. I mean, it didn't. I hear what you're saying about it being different from the comic and everything, but again, this is the flexibility of animation or live action. It doesn't have to always be a literal, translation of the comic book and everything. So
yeah, oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, and so they they're able to revive Ivy, and that brings us to our big set piece, which again, this episode was just like it was a big one. It was a tough one to tackle for our team and for our director, for Vinton and everybody, because it has again a bunch you're redesigning the show essentially for yet another episode, because we're never like in our standing sets, and then you've got and then you're inside Ivy's mind and all of that, and then at the end you're staring at this giant chase scene that takes place on basically a freeway that would never pass any standards.
It's like a Hot Wheels track.
Absolutely, it was. We always said it's Hot Wheels meets Mario Kart.
Outstanding, sure.
And we were like, well, this thing exists because we set it up in, I think it was episode 3 when Harley's trying to get the missile. I think it was episode
for demands. Yeah.
Yeah. At one point, she's like, I'd hold the city ransom and have them name a highway after me. And Ivy's was like, okay, that seems like a little, maybe that's a low bar. I don't know. But then, sure enough, she carried it through off screen, and we reveal that there is, in fact, in Gotham, a Harley Quinn highway that she was able to design. So, what would a highway that Harley's Twisted Mind design look like? And so, it ended up being, I mean, it was this thing where it was like, we can't do this without incorporating CG into the show. So
Sure.
this was like the first time in the show where we incorporated like a heavy amount of CG because of just the dynamics of the chase. You're cutting a bunch more than you might normally cut in the show. So all these angles, and ordinarily every piece of that would have to be hand drawn.
Sure.
And it was just like, there's no way.
Yeah.
And I think that, tribute to the board artists on this. I thought it turned out so well, but it came back and everybody was worried about, like, this is new territory for us. This is not the sort of system that we have set up. So, and it's also expensive. So if we like screw it up, it's kind of a lot of like lost money.
Wow.
So, but it came back and it looked fantastic. And then,
Absolutely.
it was really cool being able to see sort of the pre-visualization of this stuff because we had the CG. It was like, it allowed you to see a little bit more of a finished version of how the thing was going to move, right? How the scene was going to move, how the camera was going to move and all that. And, as we always do with the show, we board out like more stuff in like chase sequences and action sequences that end up in there. But I would say like 90% of the stuff that was in there for this chase stayed because it was just, it had its own story. It was written, kind of beat for beat, with an actual, arc during a chase. And so, the thing that I remember like was just a sticking point for a lot of people was like when the two trucks go up in the loop-de-loop and one of them makes it and one of them doesn't, and the logic of that and all that stuff. So, I think we ADR'd something in with Jason as Cyborgman yelling like they're not going to make it. And by the way, the thing that I forgot to mention up at the top was my favorite part of this sequence is Cy and his transformation.
Yep.
And
just grunting through it all too. That it really is this physical effort, and his explanation, the backstory of how he knew it was coming, but it just made it and forgive me for interrupting, but honestly, that it made it more excruciating for him to make this transformation.
Yeah, he became a trans changer. And then so I think we actually initially tried to do Transformers, but the way that legal stuff works in at least with this show is that you can say it, but you can't show it. So Bane can drive a Volvo, but we can't show Bane's Volvo.
Interesting.
And so in this instance, we were going to have Cy just say it was, the government program. We were called Transformers, and just like retconning Transformers. But because he actually goes through with the transformation, you can't. And it was essentially, the same idea. You can't say it and show it. So we had to do trans changers, which I actually ended up liking.
I love it. It's awkward, and it's great coming out of Cy's mouth, which makes it even more awkward. And the design is awkward as well. And also the fact that as opposed to being some sort of cool futuristic thing, he's like a 1980s town and country station wagon.
Yeah, the wood siding. It had to be something period specific for something, which, and his sweet spot was the 80s. So yeah. And just
I look forward to the day where we get a spin-off show of Cyborg and his CIA days in the 80s. I think that would be fantastic to do 13 episodes of that sometime, man.
I would love it. But so we have this, Cy driving the crew in his station wagon of death, trying to stop Scarecrow.
Three giant semis and size crazy, thing, and Harley and Ivy doing these incredible acrobatics, leaping from semi to semi as they try to stop these things, and while they're having their conversation about their relationship and everything during these action scenes. Great stuff, man.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's the kind of stuff I love comics' ability to get out, character stuff through dialogue in the middle of a fight scene, right? You never think about it at all. You never really step back. I mean, you eventually think about it, but but it doesn't bother anybody, right? I used to remember reading the Claremont Jim Lee X-Men stuff, and Beast is waxing poetic while he's doing all these acrobatics and these long monologues, and I'm just like, this is crazy, but I love it. And that was a thing where from the beginning, from the pilot, I was like, I really I think animation has a tendency of, because it's not the, sequential art like it isn't with comics, it's you have a tendency of treating it a little bit more realistically, I suppose, where it's just I'm going to fight, and then I'm going to talk, and then I'm going to fight. And I was like, I want in this sequence from the pilot with Harley and Ivy having this conversation about her, always falling for Joker's bullshit, and Harley's fighting off the orderlies at Arkham while she's talking to Ivy, and she's biting people's noses off or ears off and stuff like that. I was like, they got to have the conversation while she's doing all of the acrobatics, because that's comics. That's totally. That's such a hallmark of the medium, and I was like, let's do that for sure every time with animation.
Yeah,
it allows you to do so much more character stuff, and I think the dialogue makes the action more interesting. The action makes the dialogue more interesting. So, yeah, this was just another example of that. Of we're gonna have the most heated conversation between our two leads in the midst of this, high octane chase. And then, of course, we end with, it looks like they're going to get away. And Harley has to, literally blow up a big statue of herself in order to stop them. And she kind of reluctantly does it. And that statue kind of topples and, takes out the Scarecrow's access point. But then, he's off his rocker and drives over the side through the guardrail, and the truck lands in a reservoir, and you see that the super toxin that Scarecrow has formulated is now seeping into the water table of Gotham. And so, again, another cliffhanger. We do get a taste of what that toxin does when it touches plants and trees. And so we have our couple. We have Denise and the guy that she's having who's having an affair with her.
Yes.
Hanging out in the park. He's finally going to do it. He's going to leave his girlfriend and his wife. He's going to do it. And then Denise gets
eaten.
By
the killer trees. Absolutely, man. And that's our new problem. We've got the killer trees on the loose. And how, because again, the initial was stopping the Scarecrow. They didn't stop the Scarecrow. He unleashes the toxin. And now there's a whole new problem to deal with. And that is this group of trees that are clearly killers and man-eaters.
An army of killer trees. It's like Lord of the Rings.
Or Wizard of Oz. How would you like it if somebody picked your apples? Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And again, killer trees that, we'll see if Ivy's able to control them or not. And I guess that spills into, again, this great continuing thing that started with episode 8. And each episode is building bigger and bigger as we get to the season climax and stuff. And the story gets more complicated. And on both levels, the relationships and the actual physical action all being difficult and everything. So
I know we just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And, it's a thing that happens, in season 2 as well. We kind of, we really like this sort of formula of, kind of almost doing like a trilogy of episodes that to end a season. It just becomes almost like its own little feature film. Yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself right now. Am I No, that was it. No, that's episode 11. Okay,
That's
very good.
that's the end of episode 11. Yeah,
Yeah. So then,
but then 12 picks up right where we left off.
absolutely, yeah, and we'll discuss episode 12 because at first I got confused. I think I wrote down the wrong title of episode 12, but it's okay. We're talking 11 and we're wrapping up, and we will talk about episode 12 in the next chapter. But yeah, honestly, man. Well, and again, we're teasing and we talk a little bit about season 2. It's really one long story in a lot of ways. I mean, because really 2 picks up right where 1 leaves off a little bit later. But again, it's all one big story, and yeah, honestly, very, very ambitious, man. And truly, I'm glad we spent this time on the Harley Quinn Highway because, again, I think visually and character wise, things got complicated, and you guys succeeded. It was really good. So nice going, man.
Cool.
We'll talk about episode 12 next time. And as always, thank you for your time. Thanks for watching, and join us for episode 12 coming up. Thanks again for watching another Word Balloon video. We've got plenty more at our channel, Word Balloon. If you enjoyed it, please like it and consider subscribing to the channel. And of course, support me on Patreon, patreon.com/wordballoon. Thanks a lot for watching.